Okay, good afternoon, members. I declare the meeting of the Wastewater Treatment and Plant Landfill Joint Committee open. Just to remind members also that we are live stream and Councillor Sean Rush is participating via audio. So welcome, Sean.
Hi, folks.
Okay.
Should be audio and visual.
Yes. Okay.
See yourself on the TV there.
So apologies, we have no apologies. And public forum, there's been no requests received. Conflict of interest, is there any conflict of interest? Being none. Confirmation of the minutes of the joint committee on the 17th of November, seems an awful long time ago. I'll move that those minutes are a true record of the event. Someone like to second those? Thank you, Councillor Hayward.
I did have a comment on the minutes. I wasn't there, so I'm sort of like freaking it is. But there was meant to be a resolution that officers would represent the ETS costs in the regular financial update. That doesn't appear in the minutes. Does anyone remember that?
I don't, but you do. Okay, so what was the comment again? They're not there? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's not in the minutes. So this has come from Mike Mendonca. That, as I say, I wasn't there, and he's just saying that that it was resolved that officers would represent ETS costs in the regular financial update. So the minutes don't reflect that, and neither do the new financials either.
You would like to make a comment on it, David? Noted at this point. Okay. All right.
Could I also just make another point? Again, this one has come from Councillor Foon, who stood in for me, and I understand that she also stood in to me before then, asking for an update on the landfill financial surpluses, and I'm guessing also the thorny issue of dividend to the Wellington City Council. And I understand that was to appear in the minutes, and it hasn't.
No, I don't think it was to appear in the minutes, but it was. We have got an answer to that, and would you like to? Yep. I've just called the officers to give an explanation for that.
Through the chair, through our annual report, currently, or the last time, 30th of June 2020, there was a landfill reserve of approximately 9.2 million. So that's sitting there in Porirua City Council's books. But the LTP is projecting 36 million of capital works over its 30-year life. So that's opening up new cells at Spicer Landfill. So where we're sitting at the moment is we've got work ahead of us as our current cells come to an end and new cells will open up and we get the consents for those cells, and then we'll have capping. So the provision at 9.2 is well under what we'll actually require for Porirua and Tawa at projecting 36 million. So we wouldn't be looking at paying dividends at this time.
All right, well, we'll take that away, but appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Duncan.
That is, the ETS one is in there. It's the last piece on page 7. Secretarial note, the Joint Committee requested that officers include the ETS charge in the regular financial update to the Joint Committee.
Oh, it is there too. Something lost in the... Oh, sorry, it wasn't so much that it wasn't minuted, so it's the way I'm reading Mike's note, just that the information isn't included. So we can get to that at the appropriate time.
Okay.
Yeah. Apologies.
Oh, get used to this. Okay, all right, we'll then move on to move the minutes. Yeah, I'll move then the minutes noted. Councillor Hayward seconded. All those in favour, aye. Against, carried. Okay, move then on to the first of the reports, and that is the 6 point. Did we get to it? Sorry. 6.1 on page 8. I'll move the recommendation to put it on the table. I'll second it by the Mayor. Open for discussion, or would the officers like to make a comment, David?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Just one comment. I'll take the report as read, but just noting the inclusion as requested at the last committee meeting, I've attempted to drop a new bit of metric into the report, which can be done each quarter, and that's the monthly capture of methane in response to the committee's request to understand what sort of carbon emissions and CO2 equivalent or methane is actually put out from the landfill on a monthly basis. So if there's any additional information that might be added to that graph, or maybe a conversion so it's showing in tonnes of CO2, then I'd be very happy to take the comments, but that's the start point. Other than that, just happy to take any questions.
Could I just reconfirm that the reason why we would have methane emissions as a measure is that because we do not have an assessment of ETS every month or every reporting period, it's more annualised or on a longer timescale?
We're only required to pay the ETS based on the amount of methane that we produce, so that's the very most accurate metric that we actually get through that meter.
Sorry, maybe I just clarify this point. It's on methane per year, not per month or some aggregate, correct? So hence the reason why, in terms of being able to provide regular updates, you would not be able to, because there are more meetings than there are ETS payment dates.
Yeah, the latter is correct, but I can produce the graph that shows a trend on either a monthly, weekly, hourly basis. I've chosen just to present it as a monthly trend. And the idea for that is you can see there are points at which the rate of methane production spikes upwards or depresses. And to me, it's an interesting trend that you might be able to compare with the tonnage rates going up or dropping or whatever. So it's just a trend. But as you say, we pay on an annual basis. But worth taking a look at what's happening in between times.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, on page 8, item 6 under discussion, it talks about activity at the tip face, 30 by 30 metres, and we had complaints about odour, etc. When we know that's the limit, why do we go on over that limit?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would need to check with EnviroWaste, the contractor up at the landfill, to find out why it was they went over that tip exposure, that tip face exposure for a period of time.
One further question. On page 13, the table, there were 3 other complaints. We had the odour complaints and the other complaints. Do GWRC tell us what those other complaints are?
No, GWRC received the odour complaints. The other complaints relate to any customer inquiries or complaints we get directly here related to the way it's managed. I don't know what the nature of those specific 3 were, but they're frequently such things as a customer feels like they've been not treated well or those sort of things.
Councillor Duncan, Councillor Leggett, get a question.
Yeah, just going back to sludge. Sorry, a bit of an ignorant question. So is sludge always odorous, and or is it more odorous sometimes than others, and why?
Through the chair. So generally sludge is odorous when it has gone anaerobic. So the wastewater treatment plant process works with aerobic bacteria, so we put air into the process. When those bacteria die, in the same way as when anything dies, they tend to go anaerobic, and those bugs tend to produce reasonably odorous compounds. And so, yes, so old sludge tends to smell worse because it's had a bit more time to go off, and wetter sludge tends to smell worse.
So, subsequent question. So, therefore, you're telling me that it's related to time between when it's produced and when it gets to the tip or is dumped at the tip face. So, is there a set of guidelines around how quickly we need to get sludge from the treatment plant to the tip face and buried?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the other factor involved is how quickly it gets buried, and there have been times at which it is not buried as fast as it should have been, and particularly when we've got now it's a combination of dry and a lot of exposure to heat. I think is it's worse. So there have been a couple of instances where I have had to call a contractor and make sure that the covering of the sludge is happening as quickly as it should. That has an impact as well.
Just a point on that, we obviously get slammed out there in the community for all these episodes. Do we just slap these contractors over their hands, or is there some other way that we can get a bit tougher with these people? We need to seem to these mistakes are happening. It's like the widening, I pointed that out, the chairs meeting, the widening of the active tip face. What do we do? Is there a penalty? Is there what's the process?
Yeah, the contract does allow us to penalise the contractor if, for example, an odour complaint or a series of complaints has been received for a particular from a particular origin or a source. So, for example, there was a point, it hasn't been reached in this report yet, it'll be coming in the next one, where we had a string of odour complaints where the height of the tip face had gotten too close to the height of the odour spray line. So we have a line that runs around the tip face that's basically it's an air freshener, if you like, that neutralises the odour. For a time earlier this year, that line, the tip face had grown above that line. So the action taken there was to change where the line was positioned so it was properly effective. So we take measures like that with the possibility that tip face exceeds the consent condition of 30 by 30 again, then yes, I can take penalty action through the contract if I need to.
Thank you. The Mayor.
Sorry, back to Ross's question. How quickly does it have to be buried? Is it 24 hours, 48? You never actually gave us an answer on it, sorry.
Yeah, it's within the hour.
An hour.
Yep.
Any further questions on the report? Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, thanks. The increasing trend in the refuse drop-off or the total refuse in the chart in paragraph 7. Just wondering, is that a function of population increase or is there something else going on that seems to be inconsistent with where we want to be going? I'm just wondering if there's something that we need to be maybe focusing on.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, there is a seasonal pattern. So the graph here ends December 31. For the next report, you'll probably see a similarly high drop-off coming through January and February. They're typically very high periods, contain a lot of leave time and public holidays. The trend overall is increasing, and that is partially driven by population growth and also just general economic activity. There is also quite an amount of clean fill being brought in during the latter stages of last year, and the clean fill can add quite a heavy amount of tonnage to the total.
Sorry, so were you just looking at the graph that's part of paragraph 7? The total refuse less WWTP showing an increasing trend in January from January 2018, 1920 and onwards. Or were you looking at the capture of methane?
No, that was from the monthly refuse tonnages graph.
So we're showing an increase going on year from January 2018 through to January 21. So that's population growth.
Councillor Eggett.
I think some clarification around that, Sean, is that there have been some commercial contracts that have also added to that tonnage, and I think that's part of the reason why there's surplus as well.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we looked at the same chart in other landfills in the area, would we see a correlating decline, indicating that people are coming to Porirua instead? Maybe there's some sort of trend there as a consequence of better rates or something like that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so if you take a look at the graph in particular around January 2018, there's a distinct lift in what you would pick as the baseline, and that is the lift that we experienced subject to, as Councillor Leggett says, a commercial arrangement that we have. And you would not necessarily see the same corresponding lift in baseline through the other landfills.
Councillor Hayward.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to be clear here. Looking at that graph in graph 7, if we take the period of the peaks between, say, past that aberrant peak in, say, January 2017, but look from that period forward to 2022, there seems to be a pretty strong correlation that is going up over that time period. By my little calculation here, it looks like about 30%, one third of an increase from that period where I talked to, where it started, and to the period afterwards. We're ascribing this to population increase. But of course, if there was a population increase, domestic drop-off would have increased as well. But it looks like it's relatively stable, notwithstanding that little drop-off. So is it really population growth, or is it actually about the other larger providers, contractors, bringing in more to the plant?
Officer.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we could probably do a little analysis by looking at the kiosk records over a period of time and determine if there is any particular commercial operator that's significantly increased activity, or a group of operators perhaps. So if it were helpful, that could be addressed in the next report.
I think we would like that. Okay, anything else on that paper? Then I'll move the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 6.2, the report on the wastewater treatment plant. I'll move the recommendation to get on the table, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Open for officers.
Yeah, so through the chair, I'll take that the report has been read. There is a minor update around the UV shutdown. So 6.2. Oh, is that yours still? Sorry.
Yeah, apologies. 6.2 is financial report. Yep. And just
Can I just ask, did we actually finish 6.1? Because I don't recall there being discussion on the lost time injuries and the rest of the health and safety aspects.
Well, I did open it to say that were there any further, questions from councillors? There was none, so I moved the recommendation. So we've moved on. 6.2.
Well, could next time we please cover the full brief of the report, please, before we move on?
I thought we had, but obviously we haven't. So we will make note of that.
Okay, Mr. Chair, 6.2, the financials. Again, I'll take these as read, but just noted the comment before that the ETS specifically was going to be noted, and I'll ensure that that happens in the next financial report.
Thank you. Any Councillor Leggett?
On page 15, under CapEx for the wastewater treatment plant, can you, because this is a common in other capital projects as well, can you explain why we're behind year to date, or more importantly, why we're going to be $1.7 million behind in CapEx expenditure at the end of this year? And what are we doing to try and bring ourselves up to speed?
So through the chair. So at the wastewater treatment plant, we've been working through getting some renewals in. We've had some longer than usual lead times for getting some equipment over. So those haven't come through on the books yet. and we're working with Veolia around working with their asset management plan and ensuring that those works are completed. There's obviously the work still ongoing at Tangery Drive on the splitter box, and unfortunately I'm afraid I don't have much more information on that, but David may.
With respect to Tangery Drive, yeah, there's the major refurbishment work is to start following financial year.
Councillor Leggett.
Sorry, just carrying on from that. So when is it anticipated that the UV upgrade will be completed and the plant be able to handle 1,500 litres a second?
So the UV upgrade part of that project is to be completed with final commissioning of all of the UV in August. We anticipate all of the CapEx works to be finished by the end of March and possibly into April. I think we've got a bit of time in there. But yeah, so the capital works will be done, but then we've got commissioning that will follow through into August. On the full treatment up to the 1,550 litres a second, we are working on the design of the hydraulic improvements, which are to get that additional portion of flow between the 1,100 roughly we can fully treat at the moment to the 1,300. So design is with the consultants at the moment. We're expecting that to be the work, CapEx work, to be undertaken over the dry period next year, so this time next year. And we're looking to have that complete. As part of our resource consent application, we claim that it will be complete by 2023.
Sorry, just explain. You said it'll be finished by next year, which is...
Yeah, we gave ourselves a year.
2022. And so it may well be finished then, or it may not be.
So it depends on how we work through the design and how complicated that piece of work's going to be, because we haven't worked out quite how we're going to do that yet. So we need a dry period. It's because of the setup of the treatment plant, there is essentially no redundancy in that space. So over pumping of the flow is required around the inlet works. And that's obviously quite expensive. So if we can do that in the dry period, it keeps the costs down. So it's all around whether we can fit the works into that window or not.
Duncan.
Yeah, item 8 on page 15, the Central City storage tank. It's sort of ambiguous. It's behind budget, but it's not. Is it behind budget or is it on track? What's happening with that?
Yeah, there's an amount budgeted this current year with the design work and site investigations, etc., going on at the moment. Just wondering, Ian, do you have any further update as to what?
Yeah, so I'll give a general update on the project that I know about. They're planning to lodge a consent by the end of this financial year. Hopefully getting that through by the end of the calendar year, procurement to follow, and then it's a 2-year program that in year 2 and 3 the next LTP to actually build the project, if that makes sense. To construct, it's a big piece of infrastructure, so it's a 2-year program. What's that?
Construct and commit.
Yeah, I'm assuming, yeah.
These are always discussion. Councillor Duncan, Councillor Hayward, have you got something to say?
Yeah, so just again, I'm still, do not feel comfortable with the response with regards to point 8, and it may require us to receive additional information about this. But if I've understood correctly, it says here, behind budgeted schedule due to approvals. You've given the answer in relation to when the approvals are likely to happen. Where is this delay that is alluded to in this report? When was it supposed to be submitted then in terms of these approvals?
Yeah, I don't have that level of detail, but we can get that for you.
Mr. Chair, just on a general point here, I guess paragraphs like these, where they're very concise, aren't terribly helpful in terms of getting useful information. And these are items that are placed on public notice for the public to feed into as well.
Noted. Councillor Leggett.
So just carrying on from that, in terms of our capital projects this year, the $1.7 million behind, I assume some of that will be related to the storage tank and lack of approvals or design work or whatever. I wonder whether it would be possible for us to understand a little bit more what will be behind at the end of the year, please.
Yes, so each month we sit with Wellington Water and go through a major projects dashboard. So this dashboard is 6, 7, 8, 3 pages, and all of these pieces of work are noted on there with the budgeted amount for them and whereabouts they're sitting in respect of where they should be landed by the end of financial year. On that particular one, we could delve into that and get a more concise answer, but I don't have the information in front of me right now.
Councillor Leggett.
Might be worthwhile to give us the 6 or 7 pages. Well, sorry? Or link to it. I mean, not necessarily here. I mean, I just have a lack of understanding about, and it's evidenced by others, about what is actually going on in terms of where we are with certain things and why we're behind, and what we're, more importantly, what we're doing about it in order to make sure that we actually complete stuff. Because this is the sort of stuff that we're getting castigated for in public in terms of things not being done. And we'd just like to understand a bit more so we're more up to speed.
Yeah, I'll emphasise that or agree. Okay, any further questions on that paper? Councillor Rush, are you happy? Okay, good. I'll put the recommendation in. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. 6.3, Wastewater Treatment Plant Joint Committee update. Anna, would you like to make comment? Oh, sorry, I'll move the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Open for discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, as I was saying before. So I guess the one update to the report is around the work that's happening on the UV that was programmed for last week. So we've had a week-long postponement. That will now is looking to be undertaken on Thursday, with the shutdown happening on Thursday, and notifications should go out this afternoon. While we've been waiting for the sign-off from the projects team around that, we've taken the opportunity to look at our comms plan and increase the number of interested parties that will be notified. At present, that interested parties includes all councillors for PCC. So just so you're aware, all councillors will receive it. Unless, I mean, they haven't gone out yet. So if there's any feedback on that, I'm happy to take it on board.
Thank you, the Mayor.
What about the community groups, the extra community groups that I gave the list of? Are they all going to get them?
Yes, so the community groups were always receiving the notification. Did you, sorry, no, it's fine. Did you send an additional list from last, because I haven't seen anything additional recently. Sorry.
No, I'm meeting tomorrow.
If you could provide me the list, I will add them.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, before I start, I should actually just thank the Chair for your guidance on how I proceed with these questions. I appreciate it a great deal. The substance of the questions I've got with regards to the report, I want to make it clear. It is obvious, but I'll make it clear all the same. This is regards to the plant. Obviously, I'm not here to have a go against the person who's on the shovel. We're talking about here about the role of management of this plant. So when those who are listening in should be very mindful that I'm not here to try and second guess or challenge the assertions of people who are the contractors who themselves are doing the work, the individuals, I mean. I should just point out as well that I'm very mindful of the phrase tika pono aroha, so if it seems that I'm being quite assertive, know that that's the kaupapa I'm approaching it with. I note that this report covers the period up to December, But I'd like to see if anyone is able to give some commentary in relation to the discharge of partially untreated wastewater that occurred on the evening of 20th of January, and what steps have been taken so far to prevent such an event occurring again.
Yes, so that will have been the power outage on the UV part of the treatment plant. So we've worked with Veolia, who are the contractor, and they have installed some additional alarms. So it appeared that the UV, some of the alarm systems, because when the power fault happened, it turned everything off, no alarms were sent out. So they've put a bunch of additional alarms into the system. Those alarms are now not just going to the duty operator, but they're also going to the duty manager, and any alarm that goes to the duty manager also comes to me. So we've gone with a belt and braces approach to try and ensure that those kind of events, we can't stop the event that led to it, but the response time was where the concern was, and so we've worked to improve our response times.
So just so I'm clear, sup on that, just so I'm clear here, that's in relation to the notification of the alarms go to you as Wellington Water, and Veolia has got additional individuals who will be reported for those alarms. And I'm assuming that those alarms are powered in such a way that they're not going to be immediately affected by a power cut as well.
Yes, so conveniently at the Porirua wastewater treatment plant, the UV system is on a separate PLC from the main treatment plant. So yes, we can get alarms from either or if one of them goes down.
One more sup in relation to that, this one particular part. Has there been any consideration about also including in that network of people who received the alarm anyone from Greater Wellington Regional Council?
Yes, our consent officer and the notifications email receives those notifications. And we also, in the event that it happens outside of normal hours, we will phone the pollution hotline.
Okay. My next question is in point 1. It's in relation to the phrase, measures being taken to improve sampling. Can you expand on, again, for those who are listening in, they'll want to have an understanding of what that means. Could you expand on that?
So obviously we undertake a bunch of samples at the wastewater treatment plant. Often these are composite samples and are reasonably simple. You've got a little sampling machine. The difficulty we have around faecal coliform sampling is it's very easy to contaminate them, and so you've got to be quite careful when you take them. Obviously, working at a wastewater treatment plant, we consider all surfaces to be contaminated just because of the nature of what's coming in the door. So if the person taking the samples has, managed to get his gloves on the inside of the sampling container or isn't taking all due care to take them correctly, then it's just very easy to contaminate them.
So just once upon that, so just understand this is a training issue that's being rectified internally by Veolia.
That's correct.
Okay. Point 2, has Wellington Water responded to the please explain letter? And if they have, could we somehow get a copy of that received to members of the committee?
Yes, we have, and yes, you can.
Thank you. Point 8. I'm absolutely confused by this entire paragraph. Could you please take a chance of paraphrasing it in a different way?
So apologies. That has come from our resource consent team. Paul Gardner does send his apologies. He couldn't make it today. His wife had their second child last night, which is exciting news. And so you'll have to bear with me. So essentially what we are looking at, Wellington Water are looking at, are global network stormwater consents and wastewater consents. We currently don't have resource consent to discharge from the network. It hasn't been required previously. And so we've put funding into the 2021 year to gain consents for those discharges. Okay.
Point 10, when the project to upgrade the UV treatment system was conceived, and we've had several briefings here at this committee in regards to that, and a lot of public communication about this, was it ever considered that there was going to be a need to switch off the existing UV treatment plant system as part of the upgrade for any period of time?
So the difficulty we have at Porirua City wastewater treatment plant is that there was very little redundancy. Given the age of the plant, it was often not thought to build two of anything. And so we only have the one UV system, so it was always envisaged we'd have to turn the UV off.
Sup. Can you explain why that may not have made it into any of the information that councillors have received in terms of the risk assessment or the likelihood this was going to occur? Because I can assure you that Thursday, a lot of people are going to be wondering why the hell people weren't being told sooner about the possibility of this very important part of the process, but still there is going to be a discharge of partially treated wastewater.
I guess my response would be that of the parts of the treatment plant that are the most important, this isn't it. It is a final polishing stage. It's a coastal discharge. Human pathogens like living in people, not the ocean. So while we agree, and obviously the treatment plant has UV for a good reason, it's only going to be off for a short period of time and the public health risk is minimal.
Just one more step on that. I'm trying to understand why you can have a bob each way on this. If it's of importance, then this would be required, and that there is a need to inform people that there is going to be a period of time when this is going to need to be turned off because of that redundancy issue. If it's not important, then what is the point of installing it? You can't have a bob each way on this one. I'll move on to the next question on this one. Thank you. On the 23rd of January, which would have been after that unexpected discharge event due to the power cut, I wrote to Colin Crampton and CC'd in the chair in regards to foreshadowing that this was going to be something that I would raise in this meeting. In that email, I also requested a copy of any relevant KPIs Wellington Water had in regards to public notifications for discharges. On the 26th, 3 days later, Colin wrote back and said that this would be passed to Jeremy McKibben for a response. No response was given. Can you explain why requests like that don't get answered?
I'm not sure that they are in a position to answer that, but it's something that you should, I think, take up with the Chief Executive and the Chief Executive and follow that through for you.
Okay, then I would like to move on to my next question. Are there KPIs in relation to the notifications of discharges?
Yes, there are.
Would you furnish me a copy, please?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on all the methods that you currently use to inform the Titahi Bay community and beyond in relation to the public about the discharge notifications?
I know that there are a number of our comms personnel that are also working in this space. From my the work that I do and where I sit, we have the interested parties list and the community liaison group, and those are the two methods I use. There are, I understand, but I'm not involved, additional works being undertaken by both PCC and Wellington Water comms teams.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that we are aware that we need to lift our game in this area, and the council very much aware. That's why they're having these extra meetings with Wellington Water, and so I think we've learnt from the past few weeks that we've got to do it better, and I think that's in place. And I would look forward to a report coming to the next committee to say that that is in fact, or come to council before this committee to say that in fact is happening.
Mr. Chair, I still would like to ask these questions because the rest of the public are not going to be in any subsequent meetings that are going to be held this week with Wellington Water and Porirua City Council about discussions about improvements or whatever work that's going to be done behind the scenes. I think it's important that we put on the record the certain things that we do need to talk about so that can furnish and help answer some of the questions. The Mayor challenged an assertion made earlier that certain groups were not being added to notification loops. So I want to go through that in a bit more detail. If you'll grant me the latitude, please, Mr. Chair.
I think we've got the clear message about what we need to do, and I think we can do offline with the Titahi Bay councillors what the intention is to do. So I don't know that we want to grill it and get it here, because it's work in progress, and I understand there's a further meeting tomorrow morning or tomorrow with Wellington Water about all of this. But we clearly have got, I'm not putting you down, because clearly we do want answers. We all want answers, but I just don't think we will get them here, right there and here, but we need to wait until tomorrow until we have this other meeting.
Mr. Chief, my final point on this is that right now we are streaming live to the general public, and afterwards people are going to see this video. It's one of the few opportunities that, as councillors, we get to convey on behalf of the communities that we represent and on behalf of the city that we represent, the obligations that one organisation has in the operation of a plant. If it looks as though we're doing this in such a way, even though we say that we have, we are on the same page about the need for improvements to be made. But we do not give an opportunity to actually go into greater detail about what some of the groups that we need to have on our loops, about some of the other methods and about some of the other approaches that could be taken, put out in public forum. It will look like we are trying to whitewash this. Please allow me to ask these questions, and then we can get through that part.
Well, no, I don't think we're trying to whitewash it at all. What we are trying to do is make sure we get this right by questioning here. Your questions are correct. We want to hear them, and we've got the message that we've not done it right. Now we've got to get that list right and done. If we start talking or listing names here, we're going to miss out somebody. So it's a question of making sure we sit down and do this properly, go out to those community groups, and then and do what we're doing. So I don't think, clearly you're right in everything you're saying. We want it to do it better, but I think right now, and the public can take from this meeting that there is a clear intention that what we're doing, we have to do better, and our communication has to get better. So I think that's where we need to leave it at this point. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, mine goes back to item 2, the please explain from Greater Wellington. Is there a penalty attached to that? Is that going to cost us?
Based on previous experience, I would suggest it's unlikely that there will be a fine.
My next question was regarding page 20, item 7, Ngāti Toa requesting representation on the committee. That makes sense to me. Does Taku already have speaking rights here at the meeting?
That is a work in progress. He does, but the chief executive is in consultation with Ngāti Toa to have a representative. We're happy for them to join this committee, and that discussion has been held at the moment.
Final question is the final paragraph, the conclusion. Veolia are being asked to up their game, if you like. When they were sold to us as being the ideal people for managing this plant, we were told they were experts because they already manage similar plants really well. If we're having to ask them now that they're clear on their roles and responsibilities, that suggests that they weren't up to speed.
I would suggest it's around the fact that it's a slightly different contract. So the contracting model under this regional wastewater treatment plant contract services is different than a design, build, operate contract that was somewhat of a black box. So there is, so that's where some of that clarity is required. This is obviously also a plant that they've never operated before, so they needed to come up to speed with how it works. And there's some work that needs to be done, as I mentioned before, around alarms to ensure that that's at the right standard and gets the right visibility.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Rowe.
Yeah, thanks very much. And it's similar sort of vein, I suppose. What was there any continuity of staff when Viola took over? And are the people that are working for Viola, are they people that we know and have worked with before? Are they new? And I guess at some point we need to understand what sort of continuity of their staff is achieved. Because that's where things start becoming unravelled, I suppose. So just want to get a feel for the team's confidence in the Viola resources, and that they've got what they need, and that is there anything more that we can provide to help in the continuity?
I certainly can't answer before my time, but
when we first tendered out the contract, there were 5 staff at the Porirua wastewater treatment plant that were Wellington Water staff. Of that, only by the time the contract was signed, only 2 of them signed up to move over to. No, 3 of them did, to move over to Veolia. One of them had previously worked for Veolia, so he changed his role from being at the Porirua plant to working back at the Moa Point treatment plant. Since then, we're down to only 1 of those 5 staying, so I would agree some of that continuity and institutional knowledge did get lost in the handover.
Okay, and is there anything that we can do to help address that? Training incentives, or is there anything underway that is going to address that? It's okay to say no.
that's why Wellington Water was formed in the first place. Anyway, you're okay with that, Councillor Rush?
I didn't hear an answer there. I just, yeah.
Turn your volume up. No, he talked about the continuity of numbers and sort of just repeat it again.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Rush. Yeah,
Thank you.
Just a bigger critical mass in a regional contract allows Veolia to share resources across. And, you know, we always struggled when it was a standalone plant to actually resource it, because you only had to lose a couple of people down and you were stuffed, you know?
Yeah. No, understood, and I think that's right, but I'm just trying to establish whether there's something systematic going on here, or if it's a continuity issue that we can fix by training and giving some added emphasis, and it sounds like it's the latter, so it's good.
The discussion on that paper? Then I'll move the recommendation. All those in favour, aye. Against?
Aye.
Carried. I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.